Good evening. I'd like to call to order the January 10th, 2023 regular board meeting. And I'd also like to announce that the meetings of the Mechanicsburg Area School District Board of Directors are being recorded and live streamed for the purpose of transparency and to increase public access. The live stream, along with the recordings from previously held meetings, can be found on the school board's YouTube channel. Now tonight, due to issues with YouTube, they're actually not streaming it, but it will be shown tomorrow. And on that note, if any board members are not subscribed for it, it would be good to do that because YouTube actually goes by the number of subscribers before they'll do it. And like, even though we're obviously would not be watching it, just the fact that we're subscribed will help keep those numbers up. So,
I need to see what my hair looked like.
at this time, if all would like to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we'll have a brief moment of silent meditation. Mr. Longwell, roll call.
Mr. Bradley,
Here.
Mr. Burkhardt,
Here.
Mr. Hartman,
Present.
Dr. Lebo,
Here.
Mrs. Maris,
Here.
Ms. Morgan,
Here.
Dr. Rhodes,
Present.
Mr. Steinker,
Here.
and Mr. Rupp.
Here. Endorsement of agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda, Mr. Longwell?
There are no changes, Mr. Rupp, and the agenda will otherwise stand as written.
And item 1.07, reading of the minutes. Do any board members, reading of the minutes of the board meeting held on December 13th, 2022. Do any board members have any alterations or corrections to the meeting, the minutes? Seeing none, Mr. Longwell, will be accepted as written.
Thank you.
Move on to item 2, hearing of visitors of items on the meeting agenda. There will be 2 opportunities for public comment this evening. As a reminder, public comment is limited to residents of the school district. At this time, we have reached the first opportunity for public comment. This opportunity is reserved for comments related to items that are listed on the evening's agenda for a vote. The second opportunity for public comment will occur at the end of the meeting. The second opportunity for public comment is reserved for comments on issues not listed on the agenda and not being voted upon. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and requires community members to observe a reasonable decorum. If you'd like to address the board, please step up to the podium and share your district name and address. This will be on any items being voted on at tonight's meeting. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 3, reports and presentations. Item 3.01, Superintendent of Schools report, Dr. Lyden.
Thank you. Good evening. Thanks for being here tonight. We have 2 items under my presentation this evening. The first is to acknowledge that the month of January is School Director Recognition Month, and the individuals sitting around this table don't do this for the recognition, and I know for sure they don't do it for the money because these are volunteer positions, but the work that they do allows us to run a high quality system, and so we take some time in January to recognize it. The reason our friends are here tonight from the middle school is to be part of that recognition of the board, and just as a reminder, we'll have presentations from several of the buildings this year and an opportunity to visit 2 of the buildings this year and try to rotate that in the coming years through for you. Each year, I take just a minute to acknowledge what comes from the Pennsylvania School Boards Association as a proclamation and a resolution for board members. And I love that we have students here to hear this because this is history, right? So you need to know that the state of Pennsylvania, say what you want about the state that you live in, but it was one of the first governments in the entire world to say that every child should be educated. All the way back in 1834, Pennsylvania created the Free School Act, and as part of that Free School Act, they created a system where local individuals would represent a local school for the children of that community. And that's what our board is. They have the responsibility to public education and make sure that public education is in the forefront for the rest of the community. And as I said, these are volunteers who commit their time and their resources to ensure that good things are happening in Mechanicsburg. So on behalf of the staff, the students, and this community as a whole, thank you for the time and effort that you put into this position. You often don't get the accolades that you deserve, and you take it very seriously, and you understand the balance between being a fiduciary to taxpayer dollars and also providing for the needs of our kids. So thank you for that. And said better than me, I'm sure, are going to be these individuals sitting out here this evening in a way that only our students can say it. And so I'll turn it over to Mr. Yon and let you introduce the folks that are with you.
So I'll reiterate a few things Dr. Leddy pointed out. We want to thank you on behalf of all the students and staff at Mechanicsburg Middle School, your continued support of what we do and who we stand for. Tonight I'm honored to introduce two of our esteemed students. We have Mackenzie Nickens, a 6th grader at Mechanicsburg Middle School, and Lucas Harder, an 8th grader. And these two are representatives of a larger group called our Student Advisory. And they're going to talk to you a little bit about Student Advisory tonight and the leadership that student representative group has to offer. And they're also going to talk to you a little bit about some things we've done already with your full support. And most importantly, they're excited to talk to you about some things that they have planned for the rest of the year. So I'll turn it over to Mackenzie and Lucas.
Good evening. My name is Mackenzie Nickens, and I'm a 6th grade student at the middle school and part of the Student Advisory.
My name is Lucas Harder. I'm an 8th grade student at the middle school, and I've been a part of Student Advisory for the last 2 years. The Student Advisory is a little bit different than Student Council, which you may be familiar with. For one, members are not voted by their peers. They submit an application form to their teachers, and then the teachers on the academic team select 3 students from each team to partake in Student Advisory. The mission of Student Advisory is to demonstrate the CATS code at all times and always create the sense of belongingness to all of our students. We strive to make a positive difference in the MMS community by creating a sense of belongingness, which we feel is that when you feel like you belong, you do better in school and in life in general. Mackenzie's going to share a little bit more about the type of activities we've done this year in creating belongingness.
As a 6th grader, I was very excited to come to the middle school and be part of the Student Advisory because I wanted to make kids feel like they belong to our school. The Student Advisory helped with the 5th to 6th grade transition activities like the Jumpstart Shadow Experience, the main event, Step Up to MMS Summer Camp, and our August Building Tour. So those activities and the Student Advisories really made me feel welcome as I transitioned into 6th grade. I like to feel I belong to the school, so I wanted to make sure I returned the favor when I officially became a middle schooler. As a Student Advisor, we know that not every kid has food to eat on a regular basis. In fact, it's about 1 in every 10 students. That's about an entire academic team of students in our building, which is a lot of kids who can't count on having food to eat. We know that if you're hungry, it's harder to learn and be your best self. That's why it's super important for us to do something. So we organized a Dodge Hunger Dodgeball tournament for our building. We had over 40 teams of students and teachers compete in the Dodgeball tournament to help raise money for our food pantry. While we had lots of fun playing together, I'm proud to say that we raised over $3,000, which will provide weekend food packs for students in need at MMS. But we didn't stop there when it came to hunger. Members of Student Advisory joined our regional office of ECYA, Education for Children and Youth Experiencing Homelessness, and a local mentoring program, Team Scott Inspire, to raise awareness of student hunger with a community event called the Hunger Banquet. Community members, including students, were invited to this free event, which was held at MMS. The banquet created an experience of what it might be like to be food insecure. We hope to hold both events again next year.
Like I mentioned before, I've been a member of Student Advisory for the last 2 years. As we all know, the last 2 years have been challenging due to COVID. And coming out of the isolation of COVID and starting fresh at the middle school is definitely a big challenge for myself and my fellow peers. At Student Advisory, we had to slowly work ourselves into students knowing who we are and knowing what we do. Student Advisory has planned specific activities to help create belongingness and make sure that everyone feels like they belong. Being a member of Student Advisory has really opened my eyes and motivated me to help students feel like they belong and feel safe in our school, and it makes me feel that I want to help them whether I know them or not. As student advisors, we look for students in classes, hallways, and lunches that look like they may not be feeling connected, and we try and help them find peers or a supportive adult. We came up with Better Together tokens and candygrams to help give to our peers who need a pick-me-up moment, and to just recognize peers who are doing things in our school to help make a better place. Again, we feel that you belong, or when you do better, you feel like you belong in school and in life.
As a student advisory, we also look to make a difference beyond the walls of our middle school. With support from the Wildcat Foundation, we organize a Read Create Belong project, where we visit all the second graders at Upper Allen every month with the goal of strengthening their sense of belonging to our Wildcat community. We choose books that not only promote inclusion but are written and illustrated by diverse folks. After we read the book is donated to their classroom libraries. Then we end the visit with a fun activity that helps to build their confidence and sense of belonging as well. These visits are so fun for all of us. Again, our goal as MMS student advisors is to help everyone in our Wildcat community feel like they belong because we're better together.
In a few weeks, we will be hosting what has become our social event of the year, our MMS Mini-Thon. This will be our 13th year doing our Mini-Thon at MMS, and if you're not familiar, MMS raises money through their Mini-Thon for the 4 Diamonds Fund, which helps with childhood cancer. Last year, this was something that everyone really enjoyed and had a ton of fun with. We actually kicked off our Mini-Thon early this year in the fall with our Kiss the Cow contest. Students place money in their teacher's piggy banks, and the teacher with the most money in the piggy bank kissed a real cow. The contest not only raised money for children with childhood cancer, but it also created school spirit because we did themed spirit days, and some of our students earned the privilege to eat lunch outside with cows. And finally, to wrap up our 8th grade year, myself and the entire class of 2027 are looking forward to our Step Up event at the high school.
On behalf of the entire MMS student body, Lucas and I would like to thank all of you for your continued support of each of us at the middle school, including many activities that help us grow socially, emotionally, and academically.
Thank you.
On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you two for all the additional work you do and time you put into it to make sure everybody does feel included in all the good projects that you do. Any other comments?
Well, I think that's the most important thing, is to make everybody feel welcome in the school. So I think that's what you guys do is the best thing that you could be doing. So thank you.
And I love the aspect of going out to Upper Allen and meeting and reading with the others to help that, foster that at a younger age as well, so that when they come up to the high school, to the middle school level, they'll already know they have great examples from you, from other students that are setting the example of making people feel belonged, making, adding that pride in the school, and then they will pass that along. So it's just what you do just kind of, it feeds along. It's kind of that domino effect of what you do is affecting so many others as well. So thank you. Excellent job.
I'd like to say that I know that when you speak to us, we just kind of look like a board up here and we're listening to you, but that will be the greatest part of this entire meeting, your presentation and our enjoyment in your presentation. Trust me when I tell you, the rest of the meeting will be horrible compared to what you just did.
Maybe they were gonna stay.
I mean that in all sincerity. And I do want to say that I know both of your families, and I'm so proud of what you guys did, and it's students like you that allow me to stay on this board and to really be involved. And you've made your family, you've made your community, and you've made your school proud. So great job, awesome.
Is there any way to incorporate the principal in the Kiss the Cow
contest next year more full.
You take one for the team.
You were gonna say something. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say he did.
Because we make a contribution. I think pass the hat.
I'm sure he wanted to do it though. He didn't have to
Where do
ask.
see these principals sleep on the roof? I think it's beyond me. It's great up there.
It's hard to say no.
Middle of
to raise
January?
money for these.
Mr. John, anything else for?
I would be remiss not to add that our student council advisor, Jess Long, who I know just did a training with many of you, if not all of you, leads this group, and we would not be able to do what we do without her. So, Jess, thank you very much.
And the board also just heard a little bit about Kick-In for Kids, and Mr. Bigham strategically stopped the slideshow on this picture because the pooches that we have in the district are a direct result of funding from Kick-In for Kids, and so there's a connection for those of you that saw that previously and where we are now. Thank you both very much. Well done. We appreciate it. And as Dr. Rhodes said, that was the highlight of tonight. So good job. Good job.
No question.
No
question.
But if you don't believe, I'm staying.
Yeah, you're welcome to stay.
But please don't. Just go home and enjoy yourself.
Say democracy in that.
That's right.
I think the word was horrible.
That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Leidy. Any questions for Dr. Leidy from the board?
I just wanted to know that Mr. Wumlow is going to put the word pooches in minutes.
Very good.
We're live stream now. You can go in.
Kissing cows.
At this time, we'll move on to item 3.02, Capital Area Intermediate Unit. Mr. Bradley.
And here I thought my report was gonna be the highlight of the meeting. But, okay, thank you, Dr. Rhodes, for putting me in the right perspective. We actually met on December 15th, and the significance of that day was the storm day. And there was a whole day of events planned for the IU board that got all canceled, and we wound up going virtual for that meeting. But we did have the meeting, and they spent time talking about the strategic plan that they had in the mid-year report of where things were, giving the progress report from the different areas, talking about, and I've mentioned before, about the staffing issues. They've made modifications to the online employee application to help improve upon that process. Just looking for more efficient ways to keep in contact with people that interview with the intermediate unit, so that it's not like you interview and go away and you don't hear anything for several weeks through that process. They also talked about some of the things that they're doing from a student services standpoint, where they're looking to take the educational aspect one step further and expand on the educational experiences that some of the students have, building a relationship with HAC and getting some further education into that aspect of it, continuing to look at things like they've purchased a driver simulation tool or a program to help with trying to get them more, get the students more familiar with the driver simulation. They went through their open enrollment period, getting through with all the 2023 open enrollment stuff. Also in December was the first graduating class for the Keystone Academy, and that was actually right before Christmas that they had that first class. And there are 22 students enrolled in the next class that is scheduled to start this month. So we'll likely get a report a little later on this month about how that is progressing along. From a technology standpoint, two things that they talk about. They talk a lot about cybersecurity and the continuing need for cybersecurity. And then they also gave us a brief update on the December 2nd train accident that severed a key line, line for a lot of places like Mechanicsburg that used the internet connectivity through the IU. There had been a train accident in Perry County somewhere, cut a key line, took out quite a few. So they were saying it was a real-time disaster recovery effort. So they actually had that opportunity to see how they would communicate and how they would get back up service and everything for something as significant as that. And as a review process, as they went through a review process, they found some different ways to improve upon things that they were doing, like communication and what do you actually do when something is cut. I mean, literally cut from something that you didn't have control over. And then the last piece for that meeting, which was kind of interesting, I don't believe Mr. Frankhauser served all 44 years as the solicitor on the board, but he was retiring after 44 years of being a lawyer and finally realizing it was time to retire. And some friends of ours from Stockton Leader are going to be the new solicitors for the intermediate unit. Gareth was actually on the video presentation along with a couple of others. So collectively, Stockton Leader will be the new solicitor for the IU going forward. So that was an interesting little twist. And then we'll be meeting in 3 weeks. So, and that's my report.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Bradley on the IU unit?
I do have one. So, like, is the simulators new to them? Like, I had them back in the 70s.
I think they're new to them as far as actually purchasing them and getting some of their students into those simulators. So I think they might be a little more upgraded than the ones that you had.
So I was wondering if ours were put to pasture and they just bought them or something.
No, I think the simulators nowadays are a little more advanced. So,
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Bradley? Thank you for a fine report, Mr. Bradley.
you're welcome.
Move on to item 3.03, Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center report, Mr. Sanker.
I have a short report because the CTC has not met since our last meeting. Only to tell you that we're up to 9 of the 13 districts from the last update I received that have chosen to move forward with the renovation project. So, and I think the rest it was a timing thing. They haven't said no. So that was before Christmas that I got the last
9 out of 13.
Yeah. So.
Do you have a sense of the timing for the last 4?
I mean, you'd think it'd be near now.
Now, right?
Yeah. But it all depends on other considerations. The board I went and presented to hadn't had like a budget conversation at all, and we're having one in December, and that seems odd to us as, not talking about that until much later. So I don't know. I'm confused on some of the other timelines.
Say, Mrs. Maris, I mean, some boards still have like lots of committees, and something like that may have to start at a budget committee and then go up through to the workshop, and then so it could be a month or so, I guess, lag time.
It could be. So I'll keep you posted. All I know. And our next JOC meeting is the 23rd.
Any other questions for Mr. Sanker? All right, thank you, Mr. Sanker. Item 3.04, PSBA legislative report. I have nothing to report that isn't in the update from PSBA. Does anybody else have any legislative news they'd like to share that they think is important?
Does everybody like the new format? It just came out this week.
I'm still adjusting to it.
That was my first response to it. What is this?
Yeah, I'm still
No.
adjusting to it.
Takes a little time.
I mean, I'm hopeful. It's a good idea. Try to shorten it, put it in more bite-sized chunks and a more reasonable cadence, but yeah, I'm still adjusting.
I don't know if it's legislative, but it's maybe worth noting that I think it's Moomin, is how it's pronounced. Dr. Moomin has been selected as or we recommended as the new Secretary of Education. He was at Reading School District as a superintendent, and then most recently was at Lower Merion as superintendent. So a real class gentleman. I'm pleased with that. Every interaction I've had with him, I've been impressed.
Good. Very good.
From a legislative standpoint, we now have 2 state representatives for the district that cover our district, right? Okay.
Maybe one of them will support us in the cyber charter reform, since we haven't had that in the past.
It's going to be very interesting to see if that has legs now, even more so. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I tend to believe that is less of a political issue than it is a revenue issue. For,
I mean, I hear you, but it feels like if they would just stop overfunding the cyber charters, there's opportunity there, and,
yeah, I'm anxious to see where that conversation goes in the next few months.
And I'm sure the cyber charter would say they're not overfunded, but the millions of dollars that go into TV advertisements whenever you do the right to know request would seem to argue differently.
I heard a presentation from Hannah Barrick, the PASBO executive director, right before Christmas, and we were talking about charter reform, and there was a grumble in the audience about it, and she said, someone asked maybe what would be like a solution, and she wasn't advocating or saying this was a position of any association. She was just saying, here's an idea. She said if it was directly funded from the state instead of
Yes.
from the local schools, then it would kind of resolve itself from our perspective, right? And there's some of the other issues of how spending is done would quickly resolve itself too. You think? Maybe that's not a novel concept, but it was the first time I heard it recently, and I just thought, yeah, boy, that would make life easy. If that was
And at a flat rate instead of this variable rate across the state. It makes no sense when a cyber charter, it makes no sense that you get a certain amount in Mechanicsburg and a different amount at Cumberland Valley when.
And I mean, most schools had put on some sort of cyber learning during COVID, and they all know the actual cost of doing it. And,
Significantly less than they're paying.
no matter where you're at on that funding level based on each district, it's still 2 or 3 times the actual cost of providing the service. That's what's so wrong about it. It's not the concept. I think competition's good, but
Totally good.
it just should be fairly funded to the taxpayers.
And I think to your point, the problem is the person that writes the check's not the one that's able to scrutinize the expenses, and if you got those two connected, that would make a big
Yeah,
difference.
I think that's actually a good idea. If it was coming out of the state budget, and both sides of the aisle were sitting there looking at that every year saying, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why is our per pupil cost this when we're paying these public schools this?
Wow.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's it too. So.
Any other legislative discussion? Move on to item 3.05, Finance and Facilities Committee Report. Mr. Sanker.
Yes, the committee met on December 13th, and there's one item for discussion which is on our agenda this evening, and that's a presentation from Mr. Remig from Public Financial Advisors to discuss issuance of GO bonds in the amount of $30 million to continue with work at the high school. So, like I said, that's on the agenda for consideration this evening.
Any questions or comments to Mr. Sanker? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 3.06, Board President Report. I'd like to announce that an executive session was held on December 13th, 2022 for safety matters. An announcement of an executive session on January 10th, 2023 for personnel matters. And also every year we do appointment of board contacts, committee assignments, and representatives of other organizations. And rather than just do it, I actually had some questions this year, and there's some changes that I wanted to bring up to the whole board before I actually just finished it. And one is, on the board committees, we only have the one actual standing committee, the Finance and Facilities. And traditionally, the vice president is always assigned the chair of that. It's worked out well for many years. It gives them the opportunity to run a meeting and be involved. And then we've always tried to swap the other members. And before I did that, I wanted to make sure that who does it not suit to be here at 6 o'clock? Because that was part of the reason of starting that, was that we could get things done when other people couldn't be there. And I don't want to change the members of it if the people have other job obligations and part-time jobs and things. That, I mean, the current other members are Dennis Burkhart, Tracy Morgan, and myself. And we've actually been on it for like 2 years because of all the construction costs. And I think it's time to swap it around. So. I don't want to put people on there that can't make it.
Yeah, you probably should not have me as a member on that, just in case I run late in the office.
No, I know. Well, you're one I was thinking about putting on. Well, it's probably not.
No.
I just kind of feel like we've all been here almost.
Yeah, and the fact is, the chair has always allowed everybody to participate. It's just that when we actually decide to move something forward, it can only be the 4 people. I mean, Ryan, how are you with like announcing? Is that a problem if you're to be here normally, or?
There's a few times a year that I would not be here, but.
But you're interested, you would
Sure.
like to be on it? Okay. Rick, you haven't been on it for a while. You want to finish this year up on it, or?
Sure.
Lane?
I could if you need it, but probably would prefer not.
All right. And then Dennis or Tracy, do one of you two want to stay on it?
I'll stay on.
Well, we'll go with Ryan, Rick,
We'll arm wrestle.
Need a woman.
we need a woman, Tracy. Is that fair enough? And next year you can go on it. All right, now with our representatives to other organizations, Mr. Bradley has served on the intermediate unit for a long time, and this will be his last year. Ryan has been the alternate to that. So when Mr. Bradley leaves us here at the end of the year, I'd really like to see an alternate that's willing to step into that and be able to attend that one meeting a month, which is what day of the month, Rick?
It's usually the fourth Thursday, it's a Thursday morning.
Right.
And that's the only downside is it's an 8 a.m. Thursday morning meeting.
Right.
So someone that would have that availability at that time.
Right. I mean, I know, Ryan, you wanted to be alternate. Is that something you could make?
I would have to talk with my boss and get back to you on
Okay. Is there anybody else?
that. I mean, if somebody else is more interested in it, please.
I mean, it is, I know Lane had did it, and it begins to interfere. It's the one position that actually is during the business day, and it can be. And another thing, I actually understand their bylaws, but the alternate, if they go in place of rec, they're not allowed to vote anyway. So it's like,
Right.
it's kind of like, it's nice if you can pretty much obligate yourself to be there. So get back to me on that, and we'll decide.
The one time I was an alternate, I'm like, why am I even here?
Well, I did that once, just
Yeah.
helping out. It's like, she's like,
It makes
it's nice
sense.
you're here, but you
Breakfast,
can't.
right?
We get breakfast.
Yeah.
That is true.
Continental breakfast.
Just saying.
But even I set out, during the executive session, I sat out with the staff and they said, this makes no sense that, you know, your district has no say right now in what is even happening because you're the alternate.
It's the only one I can think of that you can't, they don't give that
Yeah.
right to vote or to participate. Like,
The whole tech was funny about it. One time I went as an alternate too. I don't know if that's their rules or, I know they were funny about it. They wouldn't let me vote.
I remember you telling me that, I think, but, you know, I've seen alternates there and we haven't, you know.
I said a lot for not being able to vote.
all right, I'm gonna leave Brian on the vote tech. It would be cool to take him off as he's the chair of the project of the renovation.
Thank
So
you, I appreciate that.
He will
I
remain
think
that.
the vote tech, or, let me say it right, the career technical school would appreciate you staying.
Yeah, you do a nice job.
And as far as the PSBA legislative rep, is there anybody else? I've been doing that for years. If anybody else is interested in that, speak up and we can
Same with
swap
me.
things around.
Welcome back.
Yes, you did a great job.
All right,
Thanks.
seeing none.
Great.
Dennis said yes.
Oh, you wanna do that, Dennis?
ESBA?
No, I did.
Oh, I'm sorry. She said you wanted.
There's no meeting.
Jeez.
Don't worry about it.
There's no
We're hearing
meetings,
you.
it's, other than the annual.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's nothing really involved in that. Other than keeping it, which I do anyhow.
Right, and the last thing I actually wanted to touch on is the Wildcat Foundation. The board president and the MEA president are automatic members on it, they're voting members on it. And they've, for the first time ever, the MEA president has not been a middle school or high school teacher, and therefore they have trouble getting coverage to come to some of the meetings. And I generally am out of town on Friday, so I have missed a lot. You know, I zoom in on the ones I can. So I worked with Nathan and I and some others worked, and they decided to create alternate jobs for the proxy jobs for those two positions, because it's not like somebody who's volunteering to be on it, you're on it by default. But they feel it is very important, and that person would get, and I told Nathan, if you're not gonna allow them to vote, it's a waste of time. So the MEA ended up, I believe Brian's brother is the alternate to it. And I wanted to see, is there anybody who wants to be the alternate for the school board that the Fridays I couldn't be there would be
What
there?
time's
What
on
time?
Fridays?
It's at 7:30 a.m. on the first Friday of the month.
And they're typically try really hard to be done by 8:30.
And I will say Nathan runs if you're not done early, it's done by 8:30. They do not feed you.
I'd be happy to do that.
It's a it's a great organization, and I think it's so important that one member of the board or an alternate that's something you would be interested in?
I'd be able to do that.
All right, then I'll
That's
put
a
you
good
down.
time.
Anybody else, and then I can,
That's okay.
Elaine, it is.
So you said that's an alternate if you could make it, when you could make it, or are you talking normally?
Correct. I'm usually out of town on Fridays. The last 2 months I happen to not be.
Okay.
But we'll just work on that.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
It's a really good thing
Yep.
to get involved with. It really is.
I'm glad that the foundation established that as an alternate option too, because I think that our commitment to the board, you're committed to what you do,
Right.
but just the, logistics of any of those, just like with the IU, it shouldn't be a position for retirees only to serve on this board or whatever, not have other obligations. So being committed to that, having flexibility from the foundation to allow us, I think is really helpful in allowing us to continue to show support.
I mean, for the other board members, other than those that are on by, like Dr. Leidy, myself, Mr. Longwell, they expect you to be there. I mean, when you put your resume in and they select you to be on it for that term, they're
And it's-
very tough.
It's a working board. I
Yeah.
mean, you're doing fundraisers,
Yeah.
you're going out and meeting with people, you're running events, so yeah, I
Right.
agree. It needs a committed person.
Right. All right, very good. So I'll get those things to you, Mr. Longwell, get them posted,
Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
the changes then, so. Okay. Very good. Any questions on that or any other comments or? We'll move on to item 6, new business, budget and finance, treasurer's report. Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the treasurer's report as per the attachments which include the following. Number 1 is the treasurer's report for December 2022. The board budget report December 2022. 3, the general fund invoices paid check number 64619 through 64893 in the amount of $428,952.91. Number 4 is the electronic payments in the amount of $8,217,581.59. Number 5 is the general fund invoices payable check number 64894 through 64915 in the amount of $493,086.22. Number 6 is the capital reserve fund invoices paid check number 1845 in the amount of $279,103.50. Number 7 is the Series AA of 2020 construction fund invoices paid check number 225 through 231 in the amount of $1,042,895.03. Number 8 is the Series of 2020 construction fund invoices paid check number 244 through 245 in the amount of $63,878.75. And number 9 is the Student Activity Agency Funds Quarterly Report for October through December 2022.
Second.
Second?
Further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 6.02, Mr. Burkhardt.
I ask the board to authorize the administration to work with PFM Financial Advisors LLC as financial advisor and Stock and Leader as bond counsel and solicitor to proceed with the issuance of $30 million of general obligation bonds, series of 2023, to fund capital projects of the district.
Second.
Second.
Further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 6.03, Mr. Bradley.
I ask the board to approve the tax policies report as per the attachments.
Second.
Further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 7, new business curriculum. Item 7.01, Mrs. Harris.
I make a motion for the board to approve the 2023-2024 high school course registration booklet revisions as presented in the attachment.
And a second.
Second?
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell.
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 8, new business facilities. Item 8.01, Mr. Sanker.
Make a motion to acknowledge Plan Con Part H, a approvals for the Kindergarten Academy, Shepherdstown, and Upper Allen Elementary Schools.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell?
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 8.02, Mr. Sanker.
I make a motion to authorize the administration to release bids for supplies and equipment included in the annual budget, which may include requests for art, athletic, technology education, physical education, science, maintenance, custodial, and technology for the 2023-2024 school year.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell?
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 9, new business, personnel. Item 9.01, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the personnel report as per the attachments.
Second.
Second.
Further discussion? Mr. Longwell?
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
I abstain.
Item 9.02, Ms. Morgan.
I'd like to ask the board to authorize the superintendent to attend the School Superintendents Association Conference in San Antonio, Texas, that will be held from February 16th through the 18th, 2023, for the purpose of continued professional development.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Longwell?
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 10, new business, policy. Item 10.01, Mr. Hartman.
I move to approve student DH as a non-resident tuition-free student for the remainder of the 22-23 school year.
Second.
Second.
Further discussion? Mr. Longwell?
Unless I hear a negative response, I'll record the roll call as a unanimous vote.
Item 11, hearing of visitors. We have reached the second opportunity for public comment. This opportunity is reserved for comments on issues not listed on the agenda and not being voted upon this evening. As a reminder, public comment is limited to residents of the school district. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and requires community members to observe a reasonable decorum. If you'd like to address the board, please come up to the podium and share your name and district address. Any members of the audience like to address the board? Seeing none. Item 12, Ms. Morgan.
I ask the board to adjourn.
There's a second.
Second.
Meeting is adjourned.